Hey everyone, welcome to the WoW Chronicles podcast, where every episode we look at what God's doing locally and globally to find ourselves in greater awe of who He is. Here I am. It's me, Zach Roble, coming to you from the hospital parking lot. I don't know. Tonight I was just feeling like it's actually like 11 or close to midnight on Monday night. Um, yeah, after work today, I was just so tired, and so I took a long nap and finally got up, and I'm finally filming the church tour today. I didn't film it yesterday because yesterday was just a lot of things happening, like back to back to back. So today we're finally here though to talk about the church I went to yesterday, Faith Baptist Church, guys. It was a good one. It was a good one. They're always good, pretty much. It's hard to find a bad church in Waukesha. Obviously, like different ones will meet different people's preferences a little differently. But this one, another gem, and I'm excited to get into it with you guys. So let me just check my bag real quick here. And see if I have the bulletin. I don't know if I have the bulletin. I have my notes. I'll just kind of tell you guys a little bit about it. So, Faith Baptist Church, they have 2 services a day. I don't know where I put the bulletin. Oh, here it is. Okay. So, Faith Baptist Church, they have 2 services a day. They have a 10:45 in the morning, which I like it. I like it 10:45. It's not too early. You know, I'm somebody who prefers to sleep in when possible, so 10:45 is nice. But they also have a 6 o'clock service, and I wasn't really sure which one I wanted to go to at first. I wasn't sure if they were the same service or if they're different services, and I found out today when I went there that it's actually 2 different services. So the message that they preach in the morning service and the night service are 2 different things. So they encourage the members to come to both and to experience God 2 different times on Sunday, which is really cool. I only went to the 10:45 because my Sunday had some other things going on, but I thought that was really cool that they have 2 intentional times of meeting every Sunday. That's really cool. Now, I believe I have more papers here. Yeah. So in terms of what kind of church it is, it's definitely Baptist actually as a whole. It's a denomination that I've been one of the most interesting ones that I've been learning about in this journey, because what I found, and I've just been watching some videos on YouTube about denominations as well, and the interesting thing about the Baptist denomination is that there's no copyright on it, right? Like Lutherans and Catholics and stuff like that, like they all have like a very specific doctrine and theology. And if you want to start a church in those denominations, you have to go through like the leadership. But like with Baptist, like Baptist is just a name. Like you can just plop on any church you create. You can just say, this is a Baptist church. And so because of that, it's good because it like empowers anybody to start a church, but it creates a lot of variation in what a Baptist church can look like, right? Because anyone can just create a church and call it a Baptist church. So you're going to see all kinds of different Baptist churches. Like some are going to be like way more traditional. A lot of Baptist denominations are known for like dressing up really nicely and having like high standards of appearance. Other ones are known for being like loud and charismatic and like clap your hands and all that stuff. So really like a Baptist church can look like anything in between. Specifically on this church tour so far, like the Baptist churches I have been to, which would include Waukesha City Church, and then also Crossing Community Church, and then also the Baptist church I went to in Illinois, Salisbury Baptist, were all completely different experiences. Like Salisbury Baptist, tiny building with like 8 people, and like very, very small. Waukesha City Church, more alive, very loud worship. Like you see the lyrics on the screens. Trends a little bit more, like a little bit of a mix of like contemporary and hymns, and then Crossing Community probably trended a little bit more towards like modern music. So again, like Baptist churches can have so much variation. So this one today, a Faith Baptist, was more in the traditional sense. So it was not like many of the other Baptist churches I've been to so far. It was more like there were pews, and there were, there were an older demographic. I would say probably like 30 to 50 people in the building. So definitely on the smaller side of the churches I've been to so far. Mostly older, but some like more like in their 20s or 30s, but mostly people I would say in their 50s to 80s. So definitely trended towards like an older demographic. As far as the church, when I went in the morning, I saw that on the little table in the opening of the building, they had a table that said like different missionaries the church supports, and they supported missionaries in Chile, India, and Spain. So I always love to see that. I always love to see when churches have missionaries that they are supporting. They're making an impact outside of just our hometown, but all around the world. So really cool to see that. They also had a little bowl in the church lobby with like Jolly Ranchers and Lifesavers. So I had a little Jolly Rancher to start my day at the service. So that was very nice. Some people greeted me on the way in as well. There was like a guy named John and I think one or two other people as well. So that was nice. And yeah, and I thought what was really cool is like they noticed me, and once the pastor was like giving the announcements at the beginning of the service, like they said, it's great to have Zach visiting with us today. So that was really cool that they like shouted me out by name. They recognized me. This is something that happens. It has happened a lot during the church tour. Like when I go to a smaller church, like they recognize that you're new, and they're more interested in like actually like saying, hey, like we're glad to have this new person with us today. So really cool. Like there are certain churches that's like a really big benefit of a smaller church is like when you have a new member, you can really like give your attention to them. You can really give your heart to them and like welcome them well. Like versus like when you're at a big, huge church, like it can be harder for new people to feel seen. So definitely appreciated that. Welcome. The pastor, or like there was like two people speaking. But I don't know which one of them seemed like the pastor, and then I wasn't sure if the other guy was like an assistant pastor or like an elder or something, but there were two people who were alternating back and forth talking, and one of them said that like they were up north visiting two other churches last week. So there's like kind of yeah, they're doing some kind of visiting up north as a church, which is cool. Yeah, and then again, like this is when they were announcing about the 6 p.m. service, and they said it was like a different kind of service where there's like a focus on strings music and like choir, versus like this service there was two pianos, played by these two younger women, in their 20s, and both of these women are actually the daughters of this man named Jerry, and Jerry was probably my favorite part of this whole church, which I actually don't get to him until the end of the service. Like at the end of the service, he came up to me. We had this really awesome conversation. So I'll talk about him in a little bit, but the two women playing piano during the service were Jerry's daughters, and they played for all the hymns. And one thing I noticed about this church is there was a lot of music involved. Like they had in total, I think 5 songs plus they had a choir. They had a choir come up in the middle of the service and sing "Give Me Jesus," where it's like, you can have all this world, give me Jesus. And I would say as a whole, this entire service actually kind of fit that theme of like, give me Jesus, like take the world away. Because like what ended up happening for this service as we started to get into the actual meat of it was this whole service was really based on like basically like the end times and the rapture, which is crazy. Like it's not common that you go to a church on a Sunday and they're preaching about the rapture, but this is what this church was doing. And it was funny because like right before I came to the church, I actually was looking at their website and looking at their belief statement, and like it was talking about how they believe in the pre-tribulation rapture, which for any of you who don't know anything about eschatology or like end times, like basically there's like these different biblical views that people take about like when Jesus is going to come back and like how the church is going to be affected. Like, are we going to be taken up before the suffering, or are we going to suffer through the suffering, and how long is the suffering, and like all these different things. But this church believes in pre-tribulation, which is that essentially like there's going to be a time where Jesus is going to call his church up to the sky. And this is based in First Thessalonians, which I actually like. I never clocked exactly where that passage was, but that's what they read today. Actually, they only read one scripture passage here, so it's not like a lot of the other denominations I go to where they have like the 3 readings. This one, just one reading from First Thessalonians 4:10-18. And those passages, they talk about the rapture, and they talk about like how God is going to call us up and we're going to go into the sky with the Lord. Yeah. And a lot of people have different beliefs on that passage. They think it's either literal or if it was like a metaphor for something, and they don't know when it's going to happen. So there's like a lot of beliefs, but here they are talking more in the literal sense that like one day we're going to be raptured up into the sky and we're going to like, get to be with Jesus. And like the pre-tribulation belief is that, yeah, like the church will be taken up before the 7 years of suffering. And then there will be like 7 years of suffering that the world will go through once the church has already been taken up, kind of as like a last chance for people to turn to God before then after that Jesus comes. So really crazy stuff. But so that reading was kind of like the centerpiece of the service, but they had like songs. So in general, like what they started with was a hymn called Lead On, O King Eternal. Then they had the prayer, welcome, and announcements. Then they sang a song called What a Day That Will Be. Then they did the reading. Then the pastor prayed. And one thing I noticed is that he actually prayed for a long time. Like the pastor went up there and he prayed for, I would say like 8-ish minutes probably. Like he did not like just rush through the prayer things, like, but he spoke on each one very, very like wholeheartedly, which was really beautiful. He prayed for missionaries, like the missionaries they have overseas. He prayed for the sick people in their congregation by name. He prayed for schools. And actually, so this church is associated with I think it's called Waukesha Bible Academy or something like along those lines. And so like this church is associated with a school, so they do a lot of prayer for kids and they do a lot of involvement with kids in the community. I don't think it's like a particularly big school, but it's like more, I would say like the vibe it gives off is kind of more of like a homeschool Christian environment. Like I would imagine it probably has like under 100 people in the school would be my guess. Especially based on like the congregation size on Sunday. So definitely like a smaller school, but like in those environments, like it's cool because like you can be more intentional with the students when there's less of them, and you can really like go deep in their faith. So they were praying for the school and for the kids that are going to be a part of that. And even they were praying like as the school year is about to start soon, that the right people would find the school, like people that are trying to figure out where do we send our kids, like that people would be able to send their kids here to like learn about the Bible from a young age, which is good. And then like one of my favorite things he prayed is he prayed about summer camps, which I don't hear that very often, but he prayed about summer camps, not in the sense of like wanting to see people experience Jesus there, because like, you know, summer's almost over. He was more praying like anyone who's gone to camps this summer, like he prayed that people wouldn't forget, that they wouldn't forget the way that God meets them in those like hyper spiritual experiences where they're like focused in and they really like put Jesus first. Like he prayed that people that went to those camps, especially kids, like would take that into the school year with them. They wouldn't just leave it as like a summer high, but it would become a transformative life thing. And I love that the pastor mentioned that because I have a huge passion for that too. It's like, we're not meant to live from spiritual high to spiritual high, but we're meant to like live in consistency and trusting God even when it's hard, and yeah, maintain the callings that he's put on our lives, even through the hard seasons when we're not on the spiritual highs. So that was a really good prayer too. So the pastor prayed for like 8 minutes about all those different things. Really cool. And then they did another song called Jesus Is Coming Again. Then after that is when the choir went up and they sang Give Me Jesus. Really good song of just like, you know, just really like wanting to surrender the whole world and like take on Jesus is like the main thing. Like he's the most important thing. And then 585 was the next hymn called Listen for the Trumpet. And that was like more based on the rapture verses about like, you know, the trumpet will sound and the archangel will like take everybody up and all that stuff. So yeah, again, like very, very, very focused on like this rapture concept. And then we move into the message where again, like the pastor, it says in my notes that his name is Dave, Pastor Dave Teasdale. So Dave Teasdale was preaching about, like his sermon was called Words of Comfort. And like essentially, like I wrote down in my notes, the whole message kind of boiled down to this phrase, like, don't be hopeless as the unbelieving world, because there's a great future hope for believers. And like, the rapture kind of like gives us this idea of like this future unbelieving hope, or the future hope that we do have as believers. Like the unbelieving world has no hope for their future, but because we know Jesus, like we have this hope, and we have something to look forward to and to be expectant towards. And that was really cool. Also going back to the Give Me Jesus song, I wrote in my notes here, like the verses are really powerful. Like there's one verse that says, in the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, give me Jesus. And then there's also, and when I am alone, oh, when I am alone, oh, when I am alone, give me Jesus. And those two lines both really resonated with me, because those have both been like big points in my season right now. Like the mornings, for one, like I changed my work schedule so I could spend more time with God in the mornings before I go to work. So like it's been cool to like see like how in the mornings like he's met me, and I've been able to start my days with Jesus these last few weeks since I changed my work schedule. And then when I am alone, like it has really just felt like a very lonely year over the last year in Waukesha. So like just a lot of loneliness, a lot of feeling like people don't understand me, they don't get me, I don't have a place to belong. And so like both of those lyrics like really resonated deep in my heart. And just like when I'm alone, Jesus, I just want you. Like when I am rising in the morning, I just want you. It's just really good to get my heart posture back into that, and to remind myself that's what I want. That's what I live for, is just I just want Jesus, man. I just want Jesus. So anyway, so the message like was just it was I didn't really like have a whole lot of notes on it. It was just this entire idea of like the rapture, and this entire idea of like we don't have to be hopeless as the unbelieving world is hopeless, but we can have a hope for our future because of what Jesus is going to do, and he's going to redeem us. So that was really good. I also wanted to mention about the hymns in their hymn book. I noticed in their hymnal that every song underneath it had a Bible verse. And this is different than other hymnals, because other hymnals will just have the songs, but this one, every single song in the book had a Bible verse underneath it. So every song they sing in this church is specifically based out of a different scripture, which I thought that was cool to see, that every song we sang today had kind of a scriptural basis or inspiration for why the song was written or what it was written about. So that was really cool too. So then they did the last song called My Times Are in Thy Hand. And after that, the service pretty much ended. Yeah, that was about it. So that was most of the service, right? So the service was good. And so after the service ended, I was just kind of like lingering, and this guy Jerry, I love Jerry. Okay, so Jerry, he's this 75-year-old guy. He comes up to me, and he just kind of like, he basically just starts telling me his whole story, like about how he found this church, and the journey God's taken him on in life. And it was so cool. So he was telling me he was raised as a Catholic, but then he was drafted to Vietnam, and in the Catholic Church, like he told me like he wasn't like the best Catholic, like, he alluded to stuff like he was doing weed and meth, and so he was like in like some of the dark stuff, right? And especially like when he was drafted into the army, and so he was drafted to Vietnam, but they didn't send him to Vietnam, they sent him to Germany for training. And so he was in Germany for like a year and a half, and this is resonant with me because like my dad actually had a similar childhood where he was also like drafted to Germany, in the army, and so like he lived in Germany for like a year or so as well. So it was kind of cool for me to hear about Jerry's story, and like, oh, like similar to my dad, like he was in Germany. That was cool. And he said that in Germany is when he like finally like actually gave his life to Jesus, and he went to a Pentecostal church, which was very different than how he grew up in a Catholic church. Because like it wasn't so religious and works based, and that was something he mentioned about the Catholic Church for him was really hard, was it felt very works based. And so like when he went to the Pentecostal church, he experienced more of the Holy Spirit and like what it is to have a born again experience. Like he talked a lot about this born again experience and how like when you have that, like Jesus starts to transform you from the inside out, right? So he said at the Pentecostal church he found Jesus, and how yeah, dang it, I can't even read my own handwriting in my notes here. Oh yeah, I wrote Jesus and how devotion matters. That's what I wrote. So he found out how Jesus is great, and then how just being devoted to him is important. Like, so then after his time in Germany, he came home, and this was interesting too. He was telling me that when he came home, he was kind of lost. He was kind of like, what do I do now? Like I came back, like I just find another Pentecostal church because that's what I found in Germany. Or then he tried to like go back to the Catholic church and it wasn't really working for him. And like all his friends were in different seasons of life. So when he first came home, like after everything, it was really hard for him for like a year. He's trying to figure out where does he belong? Where does he fit in? But then he said that he met the pastor of this church, Faith Baptist Church. He met the pastor of this church at that time. And he like ended up getting coffee with him or something. And that guy ended up connecting him with their church. And then he ended up meeting his wife, which was the pastor's daughter, through the church. And so like he ended up connecting with this church through the pastor and his daughter. And then after that, like, you know, it's history. So like this all happened. I think he said this was like in the 70s or the 80s. So this church has been around for quite a while. And so that pastor has passed away now, I think. So the new pastor that they have at this time is different, but it's so cool that this church has that much of a rich history that like this guy found it all those years ago and met his wife here. And now he said he has grandkids. And he even told me that one of his daughters, he had her at 55. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, that wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. like he had a kid at 55, and so he's 75 now, and one of his daughters is only 20. So that's wild. And it's an encouragement that like you're never too old to have a kid, I guess. So yeah, he had one of his kids at 55. Now she's 20, and then like I said earlier, his daughters here were playing the pianos, and it's just crazy to like again like I love hearing people's testimonies through the generations, because this has happened at a lot of the churches I've gone to on the tour. Is like I'll see a person and they'll say like, yeah, I had a past in Catholicism, and then I was Presbyterian, and then I was Church of Christ, and then I was Pentecostal, and then I was Baptist, and I was non-denom. And like it's so cool to see like people pop between the denominations, because it shows that like his body is present in them all, and like his people are present in them all. And like it's not like there's like one that's particularly right over any other. It's like we are meant to like bop between and like appreciate the way that God shows himself in all the different places. So really cool. And like what Jerry was talking about, because I told him about the church tour after all of this, and I was able to tell him my testimony as well, and kind of how like the Lord has me on this journey of going to different churches now. And he was like kind of like, oh, which ones are the most interesting so far? And I was telling him about like some of my favorites, like Generations Church and New Vision, and or not New Vision, World Impact, and then also St. John Newman's, like the Adoration Chapel, the Catholic Church, where they have the 24/7 prayer room. And he was saying like, yeah, I think this is really great to have fellowship among believers. But he did say like also that like, you know, he thinks it's so important that like in order to actually have fellowship with people, they have to be born again. They have to be people that have that born again experience with Jesus. It can't just be religious people going through the motions or just doing the works. And I was like, yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that, and we were talking about like how there's like within every church, there's a spectrum, right? And pretty much in every church and every denomination, there's the spectrum of the people that just come there for the religious activities, and then the people that actually know and love Jesus, and like he's deeply the Lord of their life and the reason they do everything they do. And everybody falls somewhere on that spectrum. And to be honest, like nobody really like, I mean, I don't want to say nobody, but I think we're human, right? So all of us have some part of us that there are days when it's just religious, and there are days when it's just going through the motions. But like the dream and like the goal and like the heart that we want to have is like to have this heart of like being fully in love with Jesus all the time, and like knowing him, knowing his love, knowing his heart for us. And that's the fellowship Jerry was saying, like, that's what is strong. And I'm like, yeah, that is strong. And that's what it's about. It's about like that true fellowship with people that really see Jesus as their everything. And so really cool. And it's fun to find those people everywhere. And I love talking to Jerry, and, I wish I could have seen him more, but again, we still got 24 churches to go. So I couldn't linger for too much longer. But yeah, it was really great to talk to him, to share my story, to hear his story, and to just see how God moved, like, through all the different countries and through all the different seasons he's been in. Like, to hear a 75-year-old man, like, and like, that was only a glimpse. Like, he didn't tell me about all his years of parenting, all the years of, like, hardship in between. But what he did tell me about is that right now he's been struggling a lot with rest, and just like, he's an older man. So like, he's a guy that likes to get active and like do physical things, but there's a lot of days where he's just tired and fatigued. And sometimes when you're physically tired, it can also like affect your mentality. Like, that actually happened to me today. Like, I came home from work today, and like, I originally was going to go to a worship night tonight. But like, I was just so tired. So I just like fell asleep on my floor for like 4 hours. And it was just like, physically, I was so drained that like mentally or spiritually, I didn't have the space to engage with the worship night. And I think that's okay. Like, sometimes you just need to sleep, and rest. And I think like the Lord met me in that today. But yeah, Jerry was saying like similar for him. Like, he's just been in a season where he's been so fatigued and tired, and like, he doesn't want that physical weakness to like affect him spiritually and mentally. So I was able to pray for him to have spiritual and mental breakthrough. Honestly, I should pray for myself too, because yeah, tiredness has just it's been heavy lately. Oh, but anyways, that being said, so that was that. That was Jerry, and then that was the service. And so as I was leaving, the guy, I think his name was John, like, told me like, hey, before you leave, like, you should take some cucumbers. So yeah, so this church, apparently someone at the church like grows cucumbers, and they like brought a bunch of them to church today. So like, I got like 3 of them. Like, look at this. I got 2 cucumbers. And they were also like, oh yeah, we also have free bread. Here's some bread. Take some bread. And so like, they gave me free cucumbers and bread that I took for the road. And that was it. That was Faith. That was Faith Baptist Church, guys. Oh man, it was good. It was good. It was good. Another winner, and especially Jerry. Jerry was my favorite part of this one. A real blessing to talk to him and to hear his story and God's faithfulness in his life over the years. Man, what a legend. What a legend. What a man of God. So, all that being said, guys, of course, this is not the end. We still got 24 more churches to attend, at least. 24 in Waukesha, and potentially some surprises outside of Waukesha that are in the works right now. So we'll see what happens. But thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll be back next week. So until then, next time, stay in awe and wonder.